Hi there, my name's Monet and I'm creating this video blog as a sort of way of connecting to other people who are going through grief, people who might have been in the same situation as me or who kind of just want to understand. When you're going through grief for somebody that was very close to you, it's not just sadness, it's a lot of depression and anger, and some days you're okay, some hours you're okay, and the next minute you're not. It's also a way of remembering my brother and telling his story, and maybe even getting support for myself or supporting other people if they feel like they're touched in the same way. Like you can't be alone when you're in grief and you've lost somebody. So about 2.5 months ago, I lost my little brother. He was 19 years old, and before I get on to how he died and all of that, I just want to say a little bit about him and who he was as a person. My brother was wonderful. And I know everybody says that about someone who's passed away. You never really bring up the bad parts, but he was tall, blue eyes, blonde hair. He liked to do athletic things, work out, loved dirt bikes, had a plethora of those throughout the years. He was funny, dorky. He would always come into my room 1,000 times a day. Just pop his head and smile. Like I said, he was my little brother by a year, so I've always had him there forever. I never remember a time without him. But he was a cool cat. Anyways, like I said, he passed away about 2.5 months ago, and it was from a heroin overdose. He has struggled with addiction for a few years. It started, in middle school, just pot, and progressively through the years it just got harder drugs. His drug of choice for a long time was Oxy, and we didn't realize that he was doing anything like that until my mother caught him snorting it, secretively, and she told him, "You're going to rehab." And so, he got put in a rehab course, and those lasted for 30 days, and they keep him in there and taper him off the drugs and give him counseling and therapy. And there are other kids under the age, at the time he was 17, I think, when they give him group counseling, and they get to see, other people in their situation. Family got to see him twice a week. We got to call him every so often, and we went through this course with him. Wednesdays it would be family, all of your family would come, and you have group counseling, or Sundays was a visiting day where we just got to do fun things and just see him, so we went through that course, and shortly after that, he got in trouble, stealing, and got put in juvie, and, which was probably a good break from the drugs that he had started up again without our knowledge. Right after he had gotten out of drug rehab, we moved because we thought it best that we take him out of the environment he was, because most of his friends were addicts themselves. At that time, some of them were doing heroin, coke, just everything, Xanax, a lot of prescription pills. And so we moved, and he passed away actually in our hometown, where we were born, even though where we moved from we considered our real home. Just moving around a lot as children. That was the place we got to live the longest, for 6.5 years. And he loved it there. He'd always talk about wanting to go back and visit everybody, and unfortunately he never got to visit the good friends, the people that were there for him truly and loved him. But he fell in with a bad crowd here. And just a quick rundown of the day I found out that he passed away. My mother dropped me off at work at 5:30, and he had work at 6:30 at his job, and so she dropped me off, and day was normal, busy at work, having a good time. My manager pulled me to the side and said, "There's a pastor who wants to speak to you." And at first I didn't think anything of it, because previously there was a pastoral convention a few months before, and a pastor came outside when I was smoking a cigarette to like preach to me and tell me God's good grace and whatnot. Anyway, so we had a back room, and I walked over to the back room. She shut the doors, so it was just me and him, and he pulled up a chair for me, and I still didn't realize anything was weird. And pulled up his chair and told me I'm Pastor so-and-so from, my mother's church. And, he showed me his card to show that he was real, or he was really who he was. And he sat down and said, "Your brother Robbie overdosed on heroin." And, I interrupted him because it just came out of my mouth. I'm like, he'll be okay, right? He's, they're fixing him up, because, not everybody dies from overdoses. That I didn't even consider it. And he said, "No, he passed away at 7 o'clock today." And my first reaction was, "You're full of shit. This is a sick joke, right?" And the look on his face just told me wasn't a sick joke. And he just told me, "I'm gonna take you there now. I'm gonna take you to the hospital." And at this time it was probably about 7:30. And so I got in this car with a stranger who just told me that my little brother was gone. And he took me to the hospital. And I walked into the room, and my dad wasn't there, and my mother wasn't there. It was just my little brother, And I could not believe it. He was one of the most important people to me, and he was my foundation. And I sat there crying for a really long time with him. And when something like that happens to you, you have to fight to keep control of reality, because I, like a child, touched him and shook him and "Wake up, Robbie, you're not dead, that's not possible." And just looking at him, and it looked like he was sleeping, and he was still warm to the touch, but he wasn't breathing. There was no rise and fall of his chest. There was no pulse beating in his neck. And my dad, which is a whole nother story, is not mentally capable of dealing with it, just going through his own bipolar thing, and so he wasn't there. He was at home sleeping, but he had seen my brother in the hospital. He couldn't handle it. And then my mother ended up getting herself admitted to the hospital because she needed medication, understandably. So when I got to the room, I sat there and cried, and she came in once or twice to check on me, but she couldn't stand being around my brother like that. And so I sat with him until the coroner came, to take him away because I couldn't stand the thought of him being there alone, even though it really didn't matter because he was already gone. But mostly it was for me too, because they asked me a couple times to leave the room because the nurses had to do something. And when I did leave the room, I went outside to smoke and I called two people. One, my best friend Gemma, and one, my boyfriend Frank. And you know, my best friend Gemma was like a sister to him too. You know, she's been around the family for so many years, you know. And of course she was heartbroken too, and just to have to break that news to other people, what do you say? I just came out with it. I was just like, actually left her a voice message because she didn't pick up right away, and it was just, Gemma, just call me back. When she did, you know, I picked up the phone and I was just bawling. Just, Gemma, the worst thing, you know, the worst thing, Robbie's dead. And her response was just, oh no, you know, and instantly crying. It's still not real. And you know, they say there's the 5 stages of grief, and there's denial, which I flounder in, and depression and anger, and you're just bouncing around all of these, and you wonder if you're ever going to reach acceptance. So right now that's my story. I'm seeing a therapist because I stopped sleeping. So now I take medication, otherwise I just won't sleep. And doing a grief counseling class at my mother's church. And you know, I feel like that helps probably more than the therapy does, because it's hard to break down in front of somebody you don't know, especially one-on-one, when they're not really talking about the things that they've gone through. You know, in a group, everybody's hurting there, you know, they're there for a reason, they're taking their time out, and you know, everybody's hurting. But that's my story, or the beginning of it, parts of it in a nutshell. And I'll be making more videos and tell more of everything that's going on in my life and about my brother. You know, and I'm just reaching out to anybody out there that might need some comfort too. Thanks.